just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. All right, welcome back everybody to another episode of Truth Seekers with Coach Nick Davies and myself, Coach Josh Greco. We have a special guest today, Chase Tolleson. Chase, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this should be a fun conversation. I'm wondering if you could maybe just give us a brief background about who you are, what you do, and we'll jump into today's episode here.
I'd love to. When I was 4 years old, my dad had a weight bench in the bedroom. So fitness was a thing. I grew up the skinny kid. I worked out to add muscle. I fell in love with fitness. I went into the Navy when I was 21 after staying in town for all of my college years, mainly smoking and drinking. And I was chasing a Navy SEAL contract. They changed the rules on me 5 days before I went to contract in and made it so it was no longer waiverable. My arrest that I had on my record made it so I couldn't get a SEAL challenge contract. At this point, I had been talking with almost all the branches of the military over the last 2 years, and had been on record that I had been talking with the Navy for the last year. So I said, get me out of town as fast as possible. This was 2010. Fast was 3 months. They got me gone in 9 days. I spent 4 years working in engine rooms. I got out. I opened my own gym. I wanted to change lives. I realized a couple years into the gym that, people were getting more fit, but they were still had that voice in their head that was like keeping them down, beating them down. It was the mindset. And I stayed searching for, how do we fix the mindset? How do we create people who are the individuals who live their goals? I got introduced to Enlifted, language, story, breath, the words that we use and how they impact our lives in a little over 2 years ago now. And my personal coaching has shifted largely to that. It is still lifestyle based. I still believe that for anyone to be truly their most powerful self, like we got to have our fitness and our health dialed in. And the words that we use, the stories that we tell ourselves shape our reality. And we can go as deep as you guys want on that one today. I shut my gym down at the end of last year after having a big perspective shift when my little brother passed. I realized I wasn't in the pictures or videos. So from there, I went fully online at the beginning of the year. I've been coaching my brand, pick a niche and stick to it. My brand is geared towards men, guys who are either, feeling unmotivated, out of love with life, and they want to strive forward. And it's, do I post like fitness stuff? Sure. And little spoiler alert, it's not the fitness that does the work when guys get coaching with me. So that's the bullet points.
There's so much there. Thank you for sharing that. I can always tell when Coach Nick's interest gets piqued, leans forward and taking notes here. Coach, I know you got questions or comments. Go ahead and take it away.
If we got to a point where you just know me too well, I feel like there's no more mystery, Coach. What's going on? Yeah, lots of stuff there, Chase. Thanks for sharing that, man. I got a little brother. That's why I was particularly piqued by what you said there. I'm sure that hits home for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Where do you get, because there's so many things, like you said, pick a niche, stick to it, falling out of love of life. That's really interesting to me. Unmotivated, but want to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find that leverage? Because if people are inherently unmotivated and out of love of life, how are they also ready to come and work with you?
Man, great question, because it seems like a paradox, right?
Right.
Generally speaking, it's going to be somebody who knows that there's more there, and they've been unable to access that next level. That they know that they're not solution aware, they are somewhat problem aware though. And it comes down to, and this is why a lot of my brand is still focused around fitness, because a lot of people think that, hey, if I get fit, I'm going to be happy. If I get fit, I'm going to be confident. And a lot of people get fit just to feel how they think fit people want to feel. When in reality, there's a lot of really sad, depressed, and messed up fit people out there. Ask me how I know. I was one of them. And to answer your question, a lot of individuals want more, and it's a story in their head holding them back. Abracadabra comes from the ancient Aramaic for "with my word I create." And a lot of people's, our language shapes our life for better or for worse. And a lot of people's language is working against them. So that's a lot of people. If somebody's in that paradox, it's usually where, hey, I want to move forward and I'm trying all these things, but it's not working. And really we get into it, and their words, their language, and stories that are keeping them anchored in the past, whether they're aware of it or not, are actually holding them back.
Go ahead, Coach.
What do you find is the key to unlocking someone to be willing and allow themselves to look at the fact that they're their own bottleneck, they're their own barrier?
Get their stories out of their head and onto paper. And here we are. We're already at the 4-step story work method. Getting it written down. A lot of people think that they've dealt with things, and they deal with things, especially men, by leaving it back there and not looking at it. And they don't feel it. They don't look at it. They're like, oh no, it's fine. I'm good. And what they did is they went past it and left it chained to their ankle, and it's dragging behind them, rattling around, making all kinds of noise.
Yeah. So like, I'm just going to get stronger so I can run faster, right?
Exactly. So I can exactly. There was an Instagram reel sound that went around like, what do we do with our feelings? Hide them in our muscles. What if we have more pain? Get bigger muscles. It's like, yeah, right. Hey, hi. It's
do everything with a deadlift, right?
Yeah. Right. You can cure a lot of things with a deadlift. And
you back in a little bit.
it's the stories in our head, and it often starts surface level, right? I had one guy who was in sales, and he was having issues calling his list and hitting his daily quota. And we traced that all the way back to fear of getting laughed at and fear of rejection over a story of getting hit by a ball in T-ball when he was 8 years old, because the emotional body is real. So that emotional anchor of rejection during sales, or getting told no, or getting laughed at on the phone, was the same emotion, that same rejection that he felt when he was laughed at by his peers at 8 years old.
Coach Nick, you just shared a document earlier in the week with me about mastering emotions. And this is where my mind goes, that so often when we experience something negative, a fear, a frustration, anger, we reject it. We don't want it to be there. And I think it's a superpower to be able to reframe that from a red flag to a green flag with, good, I'm glad you're here. What am I about to learn from it? Because when those show up, that is the growth opportunity. That is so often the ceiling that we bounce off of if we don't have another person's perspective or help who's been through that and shattered that ceiling. But when we recognize that, and it's never comfortable to go back there, but it is so enlightening to be like, oh, that's why that's there. Now this is what I can do about it. Is that how you see it, Chase?
Yeah, I like to say that, it's not the emotion that's the problem. It's the lack of feeling the emotion. Joseph Campbell.
Turn it off, right? We shut it out.
Joseph Campbell said any feeling felt all the way through is bliss. And I alluded to, when my brother passed last year, and this is what better example, right? It was completely unexpected, 27 years old. We got home from the hospital that night, and I tried it on the way home, tried saying this, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm driving and probably shouldn't cry while I'm driving. I stood at my kitchen island with my hand on the counter. I said, my brother died today. And there's a good thing I had my hand on the counter at the first time. And I took a breath. And the breath is the key. You want to lock in an affirmation. You want to make things real. You want to own a situation. The breath is the key. And then I said it again, and I said it again until like 2 hours after my brother passed, official time of death. He probably died before he got to the hospital. He's alive on epinephrine and a fake pulse. 2 hours after he officially passed, I was able to say it like I just did. So what did that allow me to do? I owned it out of the gate. So then when I woke up the next day, I sobbed to the point that my wife was like, I'm pretty sure you shook the foundation from the second floor bedroom. And I dragged myself out of bed, took a cold shower, but I felt it out of the gate. I felt it all the way through, and I let myself go there. And when we can go all the way there and feel it all the way and allow ourselves, then we can leave it where it lies too. Because a lot of people are taking their emotions and they're not feeling them, but then they're still there. You know, I like to ache in that too. A lot of people are walking barefoot over gravel their whole life. And over 10 yards of hot coals is the most plush grass that they've ever walked on. Unless you have a grass allergy, then it could be sand or something. But it's a really, really comfortable surface to walk on. And if you just turn off that gravel and walk over the coals for a couple of feet, you can be comfortable.
I'm wondering, Chase, what gave you the strength, the wherewithal, the desire to practice what you did with reciting that about your brother with your hand on the table? Like, where did that come from that you felt like you needed to do that?
At this point, I had about 100 hours worth of coaching stories and language in, and I had seen the value in ownership. I know what happens when we take a story and we own it. A lot of people, and even people that have relatives passed, like if I had said, yeah, my brother died in 2021 on November 27th, and just boom, you don't feel that. There's value to being able to downregulate and own it and sit in it, because then when you sit in it, you can separate yourself from it, and it becomes just a story. And I mean, the 4-step process is, you know, if we're starting at the top of the funnel here, you write something down, specific event, something that's bothering you, annoyed, stuck, hurt, haunted. Pick something in those, a specific memory. Somebody said something about me. You know, she left me. I lost my job. Somebody died, you know, whatever it is. And like for my brother, when I got on a couple of weeks later with one of the coaches in my community, I had 5 stories of different marks during that day. Getting the call, showing up to my parents' house, on the way to the hospital, going back to see him, watching him die. You know, boom, 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 boom. And you write it down. And then you check in with yourself. What are the feels? What's going on? And then you read it, conversational pace out loud. You check in again. And then you read it slower at about 70% speed. And it's going to feel like you're driving with your gas on the foot and the brake, or your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. And then for the 4th one, you read a sentence and then big breath between each sentence, and you air it out. And just that alone, without changing any of the language, I've had clients get on calls and just go through the 4 steps and go, okay, I'm good. That story has no hold over me anymore.
That reminds me of that Shakespeare quote, coward dies 1,000 times before he dies. Was it? And hero dies once, which is the quote, of course, but yeah, like you can have that emotion and that story hang around with you forever, and just like stab you in the face every now and again, where you can really stick with it that once and let it all the way in. And the irony is then it doesn't have that hold over you at all. Yeah, I love that, man. It's awesome.
Well said.
Awesome stuff.
Chase, how does this give you the power to help other people navigate this?
That's a great question. And in the same vein that most people wouldn't hire a broke financial advisor or an insanely out of shape fitness trainer who's eating McDonald's while they train them. Yeah, I've dealt with my stuff. I understand the stories, and I understand that on the front end of it, it can feel like it's insurmountable. It can feel like, and we'll put a pin in this, the victim mentality. We can go over the definition of that. It can feel like, oh man, this is who I am. And that's just, life's never going to change.
Yeah.
And on the backside of it, you can realize it was just a story and you can laugh at it. And for my Billy story, the thing that was holding me back when I went through the education to learn this stuff was that story about the Navy, that I had sold the car I said I'd never sell to pay for LASIK surgery. And then they told me I couldn't do it. You know what my biggest win became? The fact that I went from not really being able to run to running 2 miles in 13 minutes with a pack on, swimming for an hour, running home at the same pace. So that same story, I went from looking at how it was a loss to how I proved what I can do when I put my mind to it. And the fact that I've had that shift, I know it's possible for other people when we work the stories and look at the language and how we're looking at things.
Yeah. Hugely powerful. I find, Chase, that most people, when even if they intellectually understand the concept of like the power of language, shapes and controls the quality of their life. Like what you say is your life. That's how that works. And even people can intellectualize some of that stuff. They'll still look at something and go, I understand, but, and they're still in that space because they think what they're doing is trying to make something bad okay.
Yep.
And they think that's the only thing that's possible. They couldn't even conceive of making something bad actually the thing that they need and want. But that's actually easier than just contemplating making it okay, because you're not looking at that anymore. You're looking at something different. It's now transformed. It just doesn't exist anymore. And like that concept for me is, if I could just coach on that and focus on what you can control, I think everyone can coach on that for their entire career, because that just constantly comes back, right? And no matter how many transformations you have for that thing that's holding you back, as you're pushing to the next level, other things will come up as well, right? So it never stops. It never stops. Like it's an infinite way of growth, right? Because that's what the path is. It's identifying those as you move forward, and you don't do that unless you're pushing into something that's new.
100%. It's regenerative. You guys ever take spelling in school? You know what the Merriam-Webster definition of a spell is? It's a word or combination of words of great meaning.
Yeah.
So when you combine that with abracadabra, we're quite literally casting magic in our lives. And we can look at it. I'm sure you guys have both heard of the reticular activating system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, hey, for anybody who hasn't, who's listening, think about the last car you bought. What did you start noticing that car more on the street? Yes. Okay. Now, if I say, man, what if I go broke? I'm going to start looking for all the reasons I'm going to go broke. What if my business fails? I'm going to look at all the reasons my business might fail. What if, and this is my current what if, it's on my whiteboard right here. What if I retire my wife Q1, 2023? What if the good stuff? And your reticular activating system is going to see the good. And you're quite literally casting spells on your life. And that's just the logical neuroscience side of it. There's a whole other quantum physics, vibration, energy side of it.
Yeah, that's some cool Joe Dispenza stuff in that side of it for sure.
Yes,
that's
sir.
Awesome. Love everything you've said and shared so far, Chase. Thank you so much. It hits home on so many levels for me. Talk to us, if you will, plug, if you will, like what does your business now look like? Who, like you talked about, like perhaps who you work with, but how important is that for you? Because it's always interesting for us to meet people that are doing, there's a lot of people doing great work. And I always think about, okay, how do we make sure that we're doing great work to that scale, which we can help a lot of people? And so because part of what coaching is people loving what they do. Like you rarely meet a coach that does it because they just fell into it. It's like it's because they tend to be called to it in some way or fashion, and so it tends to be that's the first thing. But the business side of it tends to be secondary or tertiary or not even part of the equation. Nothing wrong with that per se, but I believe that if we're called to something, like part of the responsibility is to be the best versions we can, the biggest versions we can, so we can help the most people. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your business practice, how that looks, if you'd be open to share whatever comes to mind.
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking, because since January, when I shut down my gym, I've been doing this coaching online for the last 2 years. And then really only this year has it been getting my full attention. I'm surprised, when I was running a brick and mortar fitness business, this
Right.
didn't get a lot of energy. And by and large, my brand is called the Primal Man Pathway. So it is a lifestyle thing. It's let's go back to the basics. Let's get basic movement in, make sure we move our bodies every day, and get, the nutrition can be taken back to the basics too. All of the basic lifestyle pieces that, while it looks like a fitness program on the outside, one of my guys today finally went for, we've been working together since July. He went through 20 hours of education for loan officer. And he went today and interviewed for a job for a loan officer, to leave the job that he's been at for 32 years that he's wanted to leave for the last decade. So it's fitness and lifestyle. And on the backside of it, guys are finally, I had a guy last year who I'm now business partners with that took his equity out of the business he was in to go off on his own. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. And that's what it's looking like. It's a lifestyle brand. I'm heavily tattooed and 10% or single digit body fat. So I can sell fitness. I've sold fitness for the last decade. And on the backside of it, I know that most guys that get into fitness are trying to feel more confident and fulfilled in life. So I'm going to give them what actually works for that.
I thank you for that. That's great. And what makes me think about it is that if you get it, you get it, right? Like you had to go through all that path and that story to go, it's all about the mindset. It's all about the stories, the words. That's it. That's everything. When you get it, you get it. You're in. If you don't get it, that's kind of my first question was about, like, how do you get those people that aren't motivated to talk to you because they're not motivated, right? It's like, you can't see it if you can't see it.
Yeah.
But so I always think about, like, you get it, you get it. If you don't, you need something to hold on to. So I love that. It sounds like for you, it's the fitness part, because you said on the surface it's a fitness program, but it's like this week alone is one of my favorite clients, financial advisor client, who we're prepared to work on his book of business this week. We're looking at like top clients, and we can go in deeper, look to make him a whole bunch more money and serve those clients to a deeper level. And we spent the whole time just talking about the therapy session that his wife just came out of. That's not abnormal, right? Coach Josh, I'm sure like you've got examples of that all day long as well, right? We take ourselves where we go. And so I love that, like, you lean into that part and people come to you because of that, but ultimately, like, you're just helping people get better overall, right? It's like, and working on the fitness is just a baseline to get you to the place where you can, like, your head's above water, you can see what's available, right? Because those daily habits, like it's not about, the stories of why me, why is it always me, why is life hard, I can't do it, that couldn't possibly happen to me. So therefore, you're not looking for any of those things. So the fundamental part is just getting people to a place where they're resourceful enough to see the absolute abundance of resources around them. So I love the way you pull that together like that. And like, yeah, you play the cards that you've got. I mean, that's so cool. And just fitness alone is so, I mean, I'm a big proponent for sure. And when you talked about like the financial advisor that's broke, or the personal trainer eating McDonald's, I was at the gym this morning and so what happened was this huge guy walks past me, like arms twice the size of mine. He's like, "Morning, sir, how you doing?" And like, just seemed like I was like, yeah, awesome. And then upstairs, like I was working out, another personal trainer walks past with someone that he's training, and it's like, man, like, should you be a personal? And I'm thinking, I know he's qualified, I know he knows his shit, I know he does,
yeah.
But there's this little bit in my mind like that makes me go, But it's so important though, right? Like it's that I really hear that. Appreciate you sharing. But does that resonate, like the coaching plus thing, like just to get people to that place where, like, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm ready to go on the journey with you, Chase, right? Like,
definitely. I've heard it. I've heard people say, sell them what they want, give them what they need.
Right.
And it's, a lot of people, if people were aware that the victim mentality and the stories in their head are what's holding them back, then I would be retired right now, because like I'm sure the three of us would be like, it's, I mean, the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which an individual defines themselves as the victim of the negative actions of others even in the absence of clear evidence. And it depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. It's acquired. They depend on habits and attributions, and they believe it even in the absence of clear evidence. We pick this thing up somewhere and we run with it. And people do that with their fitness, with their business, with whatever it be. So it's okay. What's the entry vehicle? Is it relationships? Is it business? Is it Airbnb? Is it fitness? And then from there, a coach worth their salt, in my personal and professional opinion, is going to help to dispel the victim mentality in whatever method they have available to do it.
Chase, at this point in the episode, as we begin to wrap, we always ask for, some sort of takeaway or principle that's a good reminder of something you've practiced or that we've talked about today. But I think today I'd like to ask a more direct question about what might you say to the people out there who are in that middle ground? They're ready to be done with that victim mentality and shed that. How can they, whether or not it's working with you, what would your advice be to those people?
The work is a lot easier than it seems. There's 2 secrets to success in anything, including dispelling the victim mentality, and it's start and keep going. And once you start writing your stories and looking at what's been holding you back, the keep going is natural because you can see that light coming.
That is a perfect thread into the tagline of our podcast, the simple secrets of the successful. Successful people don't do anything crazily different than the non-successful people, but thank you for reiterating that today on today's episode. Chase, thank you for joining Truth Seekers. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.